to something that so many of you have requested, and that is we are going to build our vocabularies by making flashcards. And we haven't done this in quite a while, but I always enjoy the vocabulary builders, and I'm so happy you do too. So, as always, these words that we're going to talk about today are really, really random. Some of them I've included because I think they have sort of interesting origins. Some of them I've included because I just like the sound of them, and some of them I've included because I find them very useful just in everyday life, in modern life, that kind of thing. So some of the words are a bit archaic, some of the words are a bit esoteric, and some of the words may even seem rather commonplace to you. So my hope is that even if you know most of these words, maybe you'll be reminded of a word that you once knew and maybe has slipped out of your vocabulary. That happens to me all the time. I'll find words that I really love and find very useful, and then they sort of work their way out of my everyday usage. So hopefully, whether or not you learn something new, maybe you'll be reminded of something old. But I do sincerely hope that maybe you will learn a new word or two, and most of all, that you'll relax with me as we create these note cards. So I've got note cards right here, but first I need to get out a pencil. So I'm going to set these down for just a minute and get out my pencil case. So if you've watched my channel, you may have seen these little bubble wrap packages before. I use them for everything from holding my cosmetics to a pencil pouch. They're really good for all kinds of things, and I actually get them, a lot of you who might know already, they come from Glossier, just cosmetics, and so I love that when you order you get one of these, so I just have a bunch. But anyway, I've got my pencils inside, and I just love, I don't know, I can never get over the sound of plastic and sort of bubble wrap sounds. It's really nice. I do this when I'm by myself. I just make little sounds with things I like. So anyway, I think that you might be able to see this is a little too short for the full pencils, but when they get sharpened, they'll become shorter and then they'll fit better. So anyways, we just unzip like that. And we'll see if I can grab one. Perfect. I love a pastel. These are the little Ticonderoga Dixon Soft HB2, and yeah, I think they're very cute. So set the rest of the case off to the side. I don't anticipate needing more than one pencil. Okay, so I'm gonna actually bring the camera down a little bit so you can see me writing these. I'm gonna pull my writing surface a little bit closer. Okay, and then let's see. Just pull you down a little. Okay, and if I write here, does that kind of, okay. So we're gonna start with a kind of a seaside word, and this word is spindrift. Spindrift. Have you heard of the word spindrift before? Spindrift. So it's Spindrift. Spindrift. Just like that. Spindrift. Spindrift. Okay? So, spindrift means sea spray. Sea spray. Sea spray. So, especially as in a spray that is blown from waves during a gale or a storm, a spindrift is that spray of the water that comes up and can, soak the deck of a ship, or if you've ever been out on a jetty with the waves kind of crashing, this is the kind of spray of water that just comes up out of nowhere and rises up and just kind of sprinkles down. So sea spray, spindrift, spindrift. Okay, so spindrift. I just like words that have to do with the sea. I think they're romantic, and something about it seems sort of timeless. Spindrift, I don't know. I really like the sound of it, and there's some assonance in the spin drift that is really pretty poetically. I don't know, I like it. So speaking of the way words sound and the kind of music of those words, this word is sort of related, and it is mellifluous. 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 So, mellifluous is M-E-L. Is it one L or two? It's two. I am not the best speller when it comes to double consonants. Sometimes if a word has a double consonant, it really throws me off, So mellifluous, M-E-L-L-I-F-L, and then U-O-U-S, mellifluous. So, this is a word that means sweet or musical, and that's especially when talking about a voice or words in particular, somebody having a sweet or musical voice, a mellifluous voice, or words that have that kind of music to them, mellifluous words. So that's primarily how it's used. So sweet or musical, pleasant, to hear. Sweet or musical, pleasant to hear, mellifluous. And you can kind of see right there, mellifluous. And an example of this would be, mellifluous poetry. I encountered this word a long time ago. I think one of the first places I remember reading it was in John Krakauer's Into Thin Air. Yeah, he's describing, it's been so long, but for some reason it stuck with me. He was describing something about the Nepalese landscape and maybe the sounds of the snow or the chanting of the people. I can't remember, but I remember encountering it there for some reason. So, mellifluous. Okay, so I like this word. You may have heard me refer to like the musicality of words or poetry before, and it's true, words have a music to them, the way they sound, and so I think it's a nice word to describe language. So, okay, next word is completely unrelated to that, and it is victuals. Okay, victuals. So that's V-I-C-T, so victuals, U-A-L-S, victuals. And victuals refers to food, right? Food that's usable by people. So, victuals. We often hear this in sort of a medieval context or in a historical context. So, victuals, so food. Usable by people. And victuals comes from the Latin for provisions. So, victuals, making me kind of hungry. Okay, got a little stack now, and I apologize if there have been more cars driving by than usual today, which is strange. I wonder why, but it's usually pretty nice and quiet here this time of the year because it just gets so hot. So, okay, so the next word is, I can't decide if I want to capitalize these or not. I'm just gonna go lowercase. So the next word is delectation. And delectation means delight or enjoyment. So it's D-E-L-E-C-T. delectation, and like that. Okay. And delectation, yes, like I said, delight or enjoyment. So for your delectation, so delight or enjoyment. And this is a word that carries a whiff of beyond the usual amusement, right? Sometimes we talk about why do we have different words, so many different words to express synonymous concepts, but delectation is a kind of delight or enjoyment that might be especially savored, especially delicious. It has amusement or indulgence that is beyond the normal. So this is an elevated delight, delectation. So, and I think it's nice to have lots of synonyms in your vocabulary. It helps you to be more precise and colorful in the way you speak and the way you describe things. It can also help you be more accurate in kind of recreating a mood or a feeling. So, okay, so the next one is a word that is fairly uncommon in modern usage. Petard. So I'm going to show you first how it's spelled. Petard. So P-E-T-A-R-D, petard. And so petard is an interesting word. It is, in long form, it's a case containing an explosive to break down a door or a gate or to breach a wall, but we can just call it a small bomb. That's really what it is. It's a small bomb. So petard, I'm just gonna write a small bomb. Okay, so just to show you that, here it is. So petard, a small bomb. And the reason I bring this up is because you may have heard the expression hoist by one's own petard, or hoist with one's own petard. And this is a phrase that means to be victimized by one's own actions, right? If you are being hoisted with your own petard, it kind of means that you are hurt by your own scheme. Something is kind of backfiring at you. And so you will hear that expression, and I think that it's one that comes up enough in sort of modern discourse, but I think a lot of people don't know exactly where it comes from, as many things where you think, where did that come from? That's quite strange. It comes from Shakespeare, right? And of course Shakespeare was always trying to make words and ideas fit within his own meter, and so there was sometimes the necessity to invent or reinvent the way words were used, as in the case of petard, because it's meant to slant rhyme with the word engineer. That might be hard to hear, but the slant rhyme petard, engineer, sort of works out. The line is from Hamlet, and it is, "For 'tis the sport to have the engineer hoist with his own petard." So I think you can make that work. But that is where it comes from. It comes from Hamlet, from Shakespeare. So if you ever hear the phrase hoist with one's own petard, it is a small bomb, and I see it sometimes these days in the same kind of discourse where I think modern audiences might say, leopards ate your face or something like that. So, but still, I think it's timeless. I think it's pretty elegant. I like it. So, okay. So there's our stack. Okay. So the next word is a word that isn't so outdated and is I think used very commonly still, but I just think it's one of those words that's worth knowing. So the word is intransigent. Intransigent. Okay, so Okay, so INTRANSIGENT. Intransigent. And intransigent is characterized by refusal to compromise or to abandon an often extreme position or attitude. That's a lot. It's kind of a mouthful, so let's shorten it so that we don't get carpal tunnel. We're going to just change it to uncompromising. Uncompromising, because it's really the same. Again, it's somewhat synonymous. So uncompromising, intransigent. So again, the longer definition of intransigent: characterized by refusal to compromise or to abandon an often extreme position or attitude. And we can just shorten that to uncompromising, okay? Uncompromising. So, for example, he has remained intransigent in his opposition to the proposal. This seems like a useful adjective in times when most of us are so ideologically calcified. A lot of us have become pretty intransigent in a lot of our views, and sometimes it's good, right? It's important to have conviction, but it can also go too far to the point where people aren't willing to hear new arguments or new information. So, intransigent, uncompromising. Then we're going to go to a completely different kind of word. This word is calumny. Calumny. Okay, so calumny is CALUMNY. Calumny is a misrepresentation intended to harm another's reputation. Okay, so a misrepresentation. misrepresentation, of another's reputation. Okay, and I'm sorry, it's actually a misrepresentation intended to harm another's reputation. So see if I can kind of sneak that in. It's an important distinction, actually. It's not just that you're misrepresenting somebody else. You are doing this with the intention to harm another's reputation. So a misrepresentation intended, just try to sneak it in here, intended to harm another's reputation. There we go. So, calumny, a misrepresentation intended to harm another's reputation. Calumny. Okay, so a candidate denounced his opponent for his defamatory insinuations in calumny. Right, for an example. Okay, calumny. So, and of course we see this all the time, obviously in politics, in Hollywood, online, right? And just in workplace trauma. It's just one of those parts of human nature that's not so lovely, but it's good to have the right words to describe it, right? Sometimes if we can name the things that are not our strengths, either as individuals or as people, we can understand them and then try to do better. So, calumny. Okay, so the next word is just a word I love, and if you haven't heard it before, I'm sure that you can understand what it means without hearing the definition first. But the word is shambolic. Shambolic. I just love this word. Shambolic. Okay, and so you can see how it's spelled. Put it right out there. So just SHAMBOLIC. Shambolic. So, even if you haven't heard it, its meaning probably won't surprise you. It is chaotic. So chaotic, disorganized. Or mismanaged. Okay, so shambolic, chaotic, disorganized, or mismanaged. And this is just a word. Sometimes I like to describe my own escapades and efforts as shambolic, especially sometimes in the kitchen. Someone will ask me how a recipe turned out. This is my go-to. Shambolic. So, in contrast to the source material, the television adaptation was shambolic and rudderless, right? We've seen a lot of shambolic adaptations of movies, of video games, of books, of comic books, all kinds of different kinds of media that then they try to make into a movie or a remake or whatever, and it's often feels shambolic. So, or sequels. Sequels, very often shambolic. I just think it's a fun word, especially for laughing at yourself, I think sometimes. So, okay, so shambolic. So now we're going to move on to kind of a fun and maybe slightly controversial one. So I'm going to write the word first, and I want you to think about how you would say or do say this word, okay? So it's G E W G A W. Okay? G E W G A W. How would you say this word? So, this is the word kuga or giga. And not only is it controversial in terms of pronunciation, some people say guga, some people say giga, some people say giga, and it's also got a couple different spellings. So I'm going to write the other spelling as well. So there's the GAW or the GEW, GAW version. There is also just GEE, GA. It looks like that. Okay, so Guga, Giga, kind of sounds like something a baby would say, right? Goo goo gaga. So it is actually a showy trifle, a bauble, or a trinket. So a showy trifle. So, guga or giga or jiga, a showy trifle, a bauble, or a trinket. And I think the reason that this word has both alternative pronunciations and spellings is because I think it's one of those words that probably started off as a kind of slang and then became adopted more formally into the language. This happens all the time, right? Webster's, I believe, will induct new words each year, that usually come from the ether of slang. So that's what I think happened here. And that's why I think there are variations in spelling. This is a word that is fairly antiquated, so maybe if they had an urban dictionary in, say, the Gilded Age or something, maybe this would have appeared there. But it was a way of talking about, just baubles, trinkets, maybe a necklace or a ring or something that was just meant for pure ornamentation and very often kind of seen as show-offy, maybe a little over the top, but yeah, guga, giga, jiga. You can tell me how you've heard it pronounced or how you think it should be pronounced. I'm not intransigent on this issue, so guga, jiga, yeah. Okay, so Our next word is a word to me that actually sounds like a kind of guga, but it's not. The word is bromide. Bromide. So that's B-R-O-M-I-D-E, bromide. Show that to you. Okay, so bromide. And to me, when I first started hearing this word, I don't know how long ago, it was a word that always sounded to me sort of, for some reason, like a brooch, or like a bromide, or you hear bromides in the plural. It just to me sounded like some kind of a guga, right? Bromide, but it's not. It is a commonplace or tiresome person, or a or a statement or notion that's commonplace or hackneyed. So let's see. I mean, essentially, something that feels tiresome and maybe a little bit shallow, or yes, hackneyed is a good way of describing it. So bromide, commonplace, or tired person. I'm sorry, not tired, tiresome. A little bit different. Tiresome person. There we go, tiresome. Okay, so commonplace or tiresome person, or it can be so you could say a bore, right? A bore. So that's one, but I think I want to put both definitions. So a commonplace or tiresome person, a bore, or a commonplace or hackneyed. A commonplace or hackneyed statement. Or notion. Okay, so there you go. So a commonplace or tiresome person, a bore, or a commonplace or hackneyed statement or notion. So this is where I think I hear it used most in modern language as bromides. Bromides. So this is sort of an interesting origin story though. So the name bromide comes from potassium bromide, from potassium bromide. And I'll just hold that up a little longer in case, because it's a little bit longer of a definition. So potassium bromide was used as a sedative to treat everything from epilepsy to sleeplessness many, many years ago, hundreds of years back. And by the 20th century, bromide was being used figuratively to apply to anything or anyone that might put one to sleep because of being common, or just plain dull, just being boring, unexciting. So that's the origin of using the word bromide. It actually comes from potassium bromide. So that's pretty interesting, an actual sedative. So, but that can also kind of help you remember the word if you are familiar with potassium bromide. now, this word, this one's very specific. It is actually more medical, I suppose. Medical, psychological. I think just mostly medical. I don't know. Anhedonic. So it's A-N, oh, I'm sorry. Anhedonic is a word, but the word I chose is anhedonia, which is just a different form of the same word. So, anhedonia. So, anhedonia is A-N-H-E-D-O-N-I-A. And anhedonic is just with a C, obviously. So, anhedonia. And this is a psychological condition characterized by inability to experience pleasure in normally pleasurable acts. So I'm just going to say inability to experience pleasure to shorten it a little bit. Inability to experience pleasure in normally in normally pleasurable So, anhedonia, inability to experience pleasure in normally pleasurable acts. This kind of anhedonia, or this inability to experience pleasure, can manifest in social interactions, hobbies, or even basic activities like the pleasure one might normally get from eating. And other symptoms might include emotional numbness, low motivation, and social withdrawal. So just pulling away from people. It can be an indicator of larger conditions also, like depression, PTSD, schizophrenia, but I also believe that it is its own independent condition. So it's just, I think it's something that's very interesting, and people who experience anhedonia obviously are really cut off from so many of life's pleasures, so that's not something I would wish on anybody. Okay, the next word is prolixity. Prolixity. I just think it sounds cool. Prolixity, so it's spelled like this: Prolixity, prolixity. And prolixity refers to the state of being unnecessarily wordy or long-winded in speech or in writing. So prolixity, it describes a style that is tedious, rambling, and uses more words than needed to convey a message. Essentially, it's a verbosity that makes something boring or difficult to follow. I have never, not once, at no time, under no circumstances, been accused of such a tiresome and tedious tendency. Prolixity. So, prolixity. The state of being unnecessarily wordy or long-winded. Okay. So, prolixity, the state of being unnecessarily wordy or long-winded. Somebody prone to verbosity. Okay, so the next word is a word that has been very popular over the last few years. Liminal. Liminal. So, liminal is a word that I think has been popularized by certain things, like if we think about cane pixels, backrooms, or the longest view, or lots of different, especially horror content, talking about liminal spaces. I think that's where it's really had an uptick in usage and in people looking it up. My son was actually talking to me about the finer points of what liminal means the other day. We've been building our own version of the backrooms in Minecraft, so we were talking about it. And I think that liminal is an interesting word because it is something that is specific to a sort of concept, but also somewhat non-specific in terms of, I think what I mean to say is it really describes sort of a state of the way something feels, the way we experience something, more than a concrete description of the state of something. So there are lots of languages that have lots of words like this. I think German has a lot of them. I think Japanese has a lot of them. English doesn't have so many of them, but liminal is, well, let me just define it for you first, and then we can talk about it. So liminal means occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary or threshold. Thresholds. Okay. So liminal. Occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary or threshold. It's liminal. Liminal. So this can be a literal physical sense, but it can also be a more mental kind of descriptors. So when we talk about liminal, we are talking about things that relate to a transitional or initial stage of a process, but we commonly use this term liminal in the trope of liminal spaces. So spaces like long hallways or abandoned places, they're often described as liminal. A large warehouse that houses nothing, an office that was once a workspace but now is just a repository of dust, a wormhole disguised as a dark, empty mall. Even spaces that used to be one thing and are in the transition of becoming something new are all spaces we might think of as liminal spaces. So they're spooky because they're both familiar but also uncertain, so there's a bit of, I would say, uncanny valley about it. It's a place that seems like it should be familiar, maybe it's just an old big box store or a church or something like that, but then something about it is not familiar because it's not being used for the purpose you assumed or was intended or once was. So liminal. I'll just hold that up for one more minute. So occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary or threshold. Okay. Now on to something a little bit more cheerful. Well, no, not cheerful. I just think of it as cheerful because it sounds funny to me. So some of these words I just include because they made me laugh in the way that they sound. That's it. So this is one of those words. And the word is Donnybrook. Okay, so Donnybrook. So a Donnybrook is a scene of uproar and disorder, a heated argument, a Donnybrook. So it's not actually anything funny, A Donnybrook could be really intense, but I think the word is funny, and I think when people use it, it's funny. I don't know why. When people say, that was a real Donnybrook, I immediately love them for it. There are words like this that just, I don't know, something about it just sounds, I don't know if it's that it sounds folksy or specific, or I don't know, but Donnybrook. So, Donnybrook, it's kind of in the same class of words for me as like boondoggle. That was a boondoggle. So a real boondoggle. So Donnybrook. So Donnybrook, again, is a scene of uproar. Disorder. So a heated argument. So truly nothing really funny about it, but except the name. So Donnybrook, a scene of uproar and disorder, a heated argument. Okay, Donnybrook. Okay, this next word is cute, and it is grimalkin. Grimalkin. And a grimalkin is a cat. Pretty simple. A cat. So a grimalkin is a cat, and this is one of those words that I think is pretty antiquated, or arcane maybe. Grimalkin, and the thing about grimalkin is a lot of times it's used in a sort of magical way or a supernatural way, and so it can mean a cat in reference to its characteristically feline qualities. It can also mean a spiteful old woman. A spiteful old woman. Spiteful old woman. Somebody left a comment calling me an older woman the other day. So I was like, sir. I mean, I am. Hopefully not too spiteful of one. A spiteful old woman. So grimalkin, a cat or a spiteful old woman said with love from one to another. And I love this word, grimalkin. It sounds perfectly fit for a fairy tale. I can think of encountering this word in the novel or novella. It's pretty short, Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner, and it is a wickedly twisty little novel, and it's perfect if you want kind of a cozy, witchy autumn read. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, but Grimalkin. I always call Etienne my Grimalkin, my little familiar. So, Grimalkin. Okay. So this is a word that I thought you all might especially understand and appreciate. The word is horripilation. Okay, so it's H-O-R-R. So Horripilation. Horripilation. And horripilation is a bristling of the hair on the head or the body, and it is from fright or excitement. So kind of like getting goosebumps, horripilation, kind of like running down your back or head. And I sometimes think that, at least for me, when I first start to experience tingles, it is often kind of in the back of my head first. So anyway, horripilation. So this is a good word if you're writing like a scary story or something too, but horripilation. So it is a bristling. The quickly. And from excitement or fright. So anyway, there's a revelation for you. So a bristling of the hair on the head or body from excitement or fright, a revelation. Okay, so very good. Put that to the side. We have quite the stack already, so hopefully in all of these you've learned at least maybe one or two new words or been refreshed on some. We still have a few to go. So the next word is just a lovely word. And that word is pellucid. Pellucid. So you can probably hear the word lucid in pellucid. So I'll show you. It's pellucid. Okay. So Pellucid. 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 And this just means translucently clear. Translucently clear. Okay, so translucently clear. Translucently clear. Pellucid. And so, like, as in mountains reflected in the pellucid waters. Pellucid. I think it's a pretty word, and it can also be used again to describe language. Language that is pellucid, prose that are pellucid are just very, very crystal clear. So good pellucid communication. Pellucid communication probably doesn't contain prolixity. So, pellucid. Okay, next one. You can probably guess why I chose this word. Because it's funny. The word is Tommy rot. Tommy rot. Okay, so from the makers of Boondoggle and Donnybrook comes Tommy rot. Tommy rot. So good, right? I implore you, if you take one thing away from all of this, the next time you feel angry, say, have you ever heard such Tommy rot? Right? Just implore somebody to hear you are incensed about the Tommy rot, okay? Tommy rot is Tommy rot, Tommy rot. And Tommy rot just means nonsense or rubbish, okay? So nonsense. If you're American, you probably say nonsense. If you're British, maybe you say rubbish. Rubbish is way cooler. Nonsense. Rubbish. And you know, I actually have a favor to ask. Because I am really, one of my favorite things about the viewership here is how international it is. So in your either native language or dialect, what word do you use for nonsense? Rubbish. This is a whole lot of nonsense. This is a lot of Tommy rot. I would love to hear what word you use or like to use to express that something is just trash. So, Tommy rot. Tommy rot. I promise this is gonna make your life better. This is Tommy Rot. Actually, no, you don't even have to. You can just say the word. Somebody says something you don't like, you just say Tommy Rot. Tommy Rot. That's Tommy Rot. It's a real power move. Circa 1820. I don't know when this was popular. Tommy Rot. Okay. So the next word I have for you is xenocide. Xenocide. I tried to look it up, and I do think sometimes people say xenocide, xenocide, but this is a noun, xenocide, and it is the sense that time appears to be moving faster and faster, especially as one grows older, as one becomes a Grimalkin. Xenocide is that sensation of time sort of slipping away, right? I think there's probably a lot of parents out there who might feel this too, just from watching, your child grow up. It almost feels faster and faster and faster sometimes. It's absolutely wild. Or if you've ever been on a vacation that you really don't want to end, it just feels like the more you enjoy it, the faster it goes, So, xenocide, the sense that time is moving, or appears to be moving, faster and faster. Especially as one grows older. And this is a feeling, not a scientific occurrence. So like time dilation or something, that's not what's being talked about. Xenocide is this feeling, this deceptive perhaps feeling that time is moving faster and faster as you get older. So xenocide. It's also a really lovely sort of bittersweet song by Caroline Loveglove. If you've ever listened to her before, it's a beautiful song. I highly recommend it. So xenocide, and that is Zenosine, xenocide, or xenocide. The next word I have is sensorium. Sensorium. Have you ever heard that? Sensorium. So sensorium is spelled S-E-N-S-O-R-I-U-M. Sensorium. And I don't know if you can hear it, but now the wind is really picking up outside. So if you hear gusts of wind, that's what it is. I don't mind. I like the wind. It feels like nature just reminding us how powerful it is. Okay, so sensorium. So sensorium is the apparatus of an organism's perception considered as as a whole. Considered as a whole. Okay. So I'll show that to you. It's kind of complex. Okay, so sensorium. The apparatus of an organism's perception considered as a whole. So, for example, a virtual reality technology directed at recreating the human sensorium, all of it, right? All of what an organism, a person, an animal experiences. So the full sensorium, right? The full suite of our senses, the sensorium in total, the sensorium. I think I don't know, it's sweet. I don't know why it's sweet. It makes me think of a magical store. It sounds enough like Emporium, except you could go shopping for all the best senses you've ever experienced, you know, like, oh, here's the set of senses for when I first adopted my cat, you know. Sensorium. Here's the taste of Mother's taffy cookies that they don't make anymore. For some silly reason, like they found too much arsenic or formaldehyde or something in them. Come on. They tasted great. Who cares? I'm kidding. But you know, yeah, sensorium would be a place where all of the discontinued foods and old loves of your life, you know, all those senses existed for you to just buy, like impulse items, like gum and mints, you know. But that's not really what it is. Sensorium, right? So again, the apparatus of an organism's perception considered as a whole. Considered as a whole. Okay, entirely. So, okay, the next word I have for you is a word that comes from Italian. Omerta. Omerta. Okay, omerta. Omerta. Omerta is O-M-E-R-T-A, and it refers to a code of silence, especially in the face of questioning by authorities. Okay, so snitches get stitches, right? So omerta is this code, and this comes from the Italian, popularized by use in the mafia. And I want to be careful here not to imply that all Italians are related to organized crime at all, but this is the origin of this word, especially as used in American culture. The idea of the mafia having this code of omerta, right? That there was an omerta on something, that you just did not talk about it. So omerta, a code of silence. Code of silence. And this is especially to the authorities. You know, the police, the FBI, things like that. So, especially to the authorities. Okay? And the reason I bring this word up actually is because I hear it used in political commentary a lot, actually. So, political and sort of current events, the things that certain parties, certain delegations, certain countries or administrations have no omerta on, a code of silence around certain events, certain people, certain words, things like that. So I think omerta is one of those words that is sort of obscure enough. Maybe it's not, but it was a word that I grew up hearing more often in commentary about political events and didn't really know the origins of for a long time. So I thought it might be an interesting one to include. Omerta. This next one is similar in that it has a very specific origin and has then gone on to be used much more generally. So just like omerta, it had a very specific application to begin with and evolved into something more general. This is similar, and the word is pablum. Pablum. Okay, so pablum, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it without a cap, but it is technically originally a proper noun, I believe, and we'll talk about why in just a second. But for now, a pablum, P-A-B-L-U-M, pablum. Pablum. Okay, so that's pablum, and what pablum is well, what it refers to today, anyhow, is worthless, empty ideas. Okay, so worthless, empty ideas. Pretty harsh type. Worthless, empty ideas. Okay. Worthless, empty ideas. And so let's talk about the origins of pablum. So pablum is a processed cereal for infants, originally marketed and co-created by the Mead Johnson and Company in 1931. Today, pablum refers to ideas that are empty, that are bland, that aren't nourishing or sustaining, right? Ideas that are sort of low nutrition and not very satisfying. So again, the idea is that pablum, this processed cereal, is very bland and didn't have a lot of complexity to it, and so it's a word now, pablum, often used to insult or critique published writing or public speech. That calling somebody's ideas pablum is not a flattering thing. So pablum. Okay. And I am actually realizing that I still have quite a few words left, so instead of cut any of them out, I think we're just going to go ahead and do 2 parts. That way I can get through all of the words that I thought you might enjoy. So we'll go ahead and call it here for today, and then I'll be back really shortly with the rest of the words for you. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found some words that are interesting and useful. As always, it is such a pleasure to have you here, and I'm so grateful for being able to spend a little time together. So I'm wishing you and yours every nice thing, and I will be back with some more words very, very shortly. Thanks so much for watching and for being you. See you soon.